Why there are so many protests and demonstrations in Hong Kong. Hong Kong has processions and protest meetings averages about 5,000 times per year since it became the special administrative region in 1997. According to the Hong Kong police statistics, there were around 13,000 such events in year 2016. According to Wikipedia, there were about 17 bigger-size protests, demonstrations and marches since 2005, averaging about once a year. Why there are so many protests and demonstrations in Hong Kong. While the official Chinese media did not always talk much about the causes and reasons of the Hong Kong protest, it attributed these nasty Hong Kong protests to foreign interferences, wanting to split Hong Kong from China. United States was suspected to be the force behind the protest. There were talks and gossips about certain groups, advocating Hong Kong independence. On the other hand, the democratic activists advocating the fight for freedom and liberty, demanding democratic reform, and asking for universal suffrage to elect all government office bearers including the chief executive. They are afraid to lose the high degree of autonomy. While these are reasons that can explain some of the happenings, but it cannot explain properly why there are always hundreds of thousands of protesters turning up at each protest. This has been going on almost every weekend for the past 6 months. People just don't throw themselves for some sweet talks for no good reasons. One good reason that nobody had talked much about or would like to talk about is the growing poverty level in Hong Kong. According to the government's publishing material, Hong Kong's poverty rate is about 20% in 2017, although the government has managed somehow to reduce this percentage. But this is just not good enough, especially for the younger generations. This means 1 in 5 or about 1.4 million Hong Kong people are living under the poverty line. This figure is very high as compared to Macau and Singapore, which are below 4%. The Wikipedia statistics also shows that the other economical figures are not as good. For example, the GDP per capita of Hong Kong is only 1/2 of Macau's figure. It is also lower than Singapore. According to many news medias, about 200,000 people in Hong Kong still living in very tiny subdivided home units, called coffin home. These homes, measured an average of 2 square meters, will cost about 2,400 Hong Kong dollars or $300 per month as rent. Some of these homes are so small that a person cannot even fully stretch out their legs. We now examine 2 charts. The first chart shows the graphic plot of labor force participation rate. One can see that the Hong Kong's rate has been going down from 66% in 1985 to about 60% in 2019. This labor force participation rate might not reflected in the unemployment rate, which could remain low because unemployment rate does not track those people who had already left the workforce permanently or had given up seeking an employment. On the other hand, the Singapore has a much better and healthier labor participation rate. The second chart shows the numbers of bankruptcy. The rate has climbed from almost zero before 1997 to about 21,000 in March 2019. This could explain why the Hong Kong's labor force participation rate has gone down in recent years. On the other hand, the bankruptcy rate in Singapore has gone down the opposite way. In conclusion, the many protests and demonstrations in Hong Kong got to have something to do with Hong Kong people not being able to get a proper roof over their heads. Also, many could not get a decent job and live comfortably, although the unemployment rate was not high. The foreign interferences and the extremists calling for Hong Kong independence do not appear to be the only reason for the protests and demonstration.